Hi, it's Dr. Yopp, your favorite grief recovery method specialist, certified by the Grief Recovery Institute. Welcome to this week's episode of Takeaways About Grief. Are you too angry to grieve? Is it possible to be too angry to grieve? Let's have a quick chat about grief. What is your automatic thought when you hear the word grief? Is it sadness, heartache, tears? I'm guessing anger would likely not be the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word grief. Well, grief is not just about sadness. We define grief as the natural and normal oscillating emotions caused by significant emotional loss. And that loss can range from loss of relationship due to breakup or death to loss of employment or loss of connections due to a move, loss of trust, loss of faith. Unfortunately, we've been socialized at young ages to believe that dealing with grief outside of the light of the myths surrounding grief is not okay. Right? Instead of being taught to express whatever negative feelings you may be having surrounding your loss, you've likely been taught that no one wants to be around a sad Sally. So you learn to suppress your emotions until you can isolate, leading you to being unable to properly move past some of the negative emotions, anger included, surrounding your loss. Well, let me talk about this grief and anger thing by sharing a personal experience. I have previously been transparent that before my late husband died 2 years ago next week, we were in the process of divorcing because of his chronic alcoholism. And though we were still amicable, actually separated in the same house, I was angry at him because of years of events and ultimately the final deal breaker of him putting his hands on me in anger that led me to filing for divorce after 23 years of marriage. I was angry because he was prolonging what could have been finalized, all because he would not sign off on the timeshare agreement for our then 15-year-old daughter. I was angry because he could not agree to my stipulations of having to pass a urine test before our daughter would be allowed to be under his care. He could not because he was a chronic alcoholic and he knew he would never pass the test. I was angry because he told me it was his choice to not stop drinking, even at the risk of losing everything. I was angry because mine and our daughter's love for him was not enough for him. I was so very angry. And then he died. Then I was angry because he put me in the predicament of having to find his body in a state I will never be able to unsee. I was angry because he died estranged from our eldest daughter because of his doing, and she would no longer have the hopes of ever having a reconciled relationship with him. So I planned his memorial, and guess what? The anger still had a stronghold as I sat in the church listening to all the amazing stories about a man to whom I had been married for over 2 decades. Yet our daughters and I had no idea who this version of whom everyone spoke of him was. Yet in the midst of all of this anger that encompassed me, I was still sad. And at times my heart felt shattered for myself and especially for our amazing daughters. But the anger outweighed my sadness. It wasn't until about 7 months after his death that I was able to truly mourn, to truly feel, to give myself permission to feel the sadness and heartache over the loss of my relationship to him long before his death. The sadness and heartache of realizing that my dream of us actually becoming friends after the divorce would not come true. The sadness and heartache, no longer the anger over the estrangement between him and our daughter. The sadness and heartache that he still believed it was his choice long after it no longer was. And that I, because of the decades of anger blinding me, could not see or believe that his alcoholism was no longer his choice. So back to the original question, are you too angry to grieve? Is it possible to be too angry to grieve? I believe so. And for me, the answer was yes. But once I learned to sever my ties to the anger, I was finally able to truly grieve and can now remember the man I loved since I was 17 years old with peace in my heart. I can now be present in and enjoy the moment of a happy or fun memory our youngest wants to share about him without a fake smile on my face. I no longer believe the myth that because I was angry, because I filed for divorce, that I didn't have the right to grieve. The grief recovery method was an integral part of my ability to end my relationship with anger and truly grieve the loss of my late husband and allow myself an increased capacity to be happy and intentionally enjoy life, not just endure it. And I'm offering you the same opportunity. The opportunity to learn the proper steps to get past your anger and any other negative emotions that may be surrounding your loss and holding you back. I'm awarding 5 people with a $525 scholarship for a 7-week one-on-one online grief recovery method session with me. The drawing will take place on May 15th, so text Ready for Grief Recovery to 813-324-4474 to enter for your chance to win the Normalize Grief Scholarship. Ready for Grief Recovery? Sessions begin in June. Let me hear from you by May 15th.